This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. They say that laughter is the best medicine. Apparently so. It has healing properties and can really move your life forward. And we're going to look at that today through the lens of psychotherapy, which is what she offers. And go a layer deeper than that. She also helps people involved in car accidents get their lives back together again. There's so much going on there, not just the physical, the emotional aspect of it. And I've learned so much. I talk about her when she's not around in such a positive way of the things that I've learned ever since we've gotten together with Miriam Rosario, who's back on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you back. And the laughter thing, always heard it was good for you, but probably more than we would ever think. Can we start there? You know, how does one define laughter? And are we supposed to walk around chuckling all the time and then we're going to feel better?
Well, it depends. Depends if you're thinking about something that's funny, then why not laugh about it? I think that laughter actually helps people to feel calmer and not as anxious or stressed, especially when you have somebody who is in your circle, or you're hanging out with somebody that is entertaining and love to make people laugh. And I think that one of the things that I always recommend with clients is to not, especially when they're depressed, is to try and find maybe some stand-up that they like, or a movie that's funny, or find some jokes. Go through social media and get some one-liners that are like really funny, just to get them outside of their head, because that's one thing that laughter also does. It brings you present to the moment.
Tell me about that. I'm trying to process that. Presence of moment. You mean living in the now, essentially?
Yes, living in the now, because when we're anxious or depressed or stressed, we're not in the moment. We're thinking about what happened yesterday or in the past, or we're concerned about what's going to happen in the future because we have no control over it. We don't know what's going to happen. It's the unknown. So that is what causes it. And if you're able to laugh, that brings you to the present moment because you're laughing about something in the moment.
I never thought of it that way. And in my journey, living in the moment was a game changer. I met somebody a number of years ago, and they actually said to me, "Why don't you ever live in the moment?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Well, what are you talking about?" And they said, "You're always living in the past, the future. You're not living in the moment." So that for me, once I processed that, figured it all out, very impactful. But I can see that now when you're laughing at something, let's say it's an HBO or Netflix, stand-up special or whatever it might be, you're focused on that. You're focused on what you're getting from it. There's no way that you can think about the future or the past at that moment. What's going on there when we laugh? It's a chemical release, right?
It is. It's a chemical release. It's letting go of something that may be causing a lot of tension, or maybe something that's causing a lot of embarrassment. To be able to laugh at ourselves is great. And sometimes clients are telling stories that aren't meant to be funny, but as they're relaying it and the way that they're talking about it, it ends up being something funny.
Well, I would imagine that it's an equalizer and connects us, because what's funny? Funny is usually something that's relatable, so we can all connect to it. There's
Right.
I guess a bonding, a social connection there.
There is, and it also helps alleviate the tension of any kind of trauma or PTSD that may be in the forefront, or in your memory in the back.
Mm.
It also helps to forget and alleviate some pain. Um, and it's like a breakthrough and reduces a lot of social withdrawal if you're feeling depressed or anxious. It helps to emotionally regulate.
What else is going on when we laugh? Because I'm learning here there's so much more to it than just putting on something or going to a show or somebody telling a joke.
What else is going on is actually taking yourself, like I said earlier, out of the past and into the moment and feeling calmer about whatever it is that may be happening.
Hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's got a therapeutic calming effect.
Yes.
Who doesn't like to laugh? Um,
Hmm.
what about things within our subconscious? We talked about that before, things that, may have presented when you were a child that, call them traumas. It could be little things, but it's still impacting the way you act as an adult. Would it address any of that kind of stuff?
It can. I can. I mean, I remember when I was a little girl, I got yelled at by my mother. I can't remember what it was, but I remember writing on a piece of paper that my mother is a pig and just forgetting about it and going about my day. And my mother found it and she knew it was me because she recognized the handwriting. And looking back now, like that's a funny story
Yeah, right.
because it's just me being honest as to how I was feeling in the moment. But my mother made sure that she used it as an educational moment emotionally to let me know that that is disrespectful. You
Mm.
don't do that.
So you shared, I'm going to share one that just is coming to my mind right now. I was in second grade and I just burst out laughing in the classroom. And the teacher, Ms. Baruch, never forgot her name, comes over, grabs my arm, and swats me on the butt, spanks me.
Uh-huh.
Today she'd be in jail. Back then it was a different time.
Hmm.
Put me in front of the classroom, sat me in a chair, and I had to stare at the classroom, like horrible. I just laughed. So I told my mother, there's a whole big thing, hearing or whatever. I got moved out of that classroom. But I have to tell you, people have said to me before, why don't you laugh out loud? And I think things are funny, but I'm not one of those people that sit there and like, I'll chuckle, I'll laugh, whatever, but I'm not like, the big belly laugher, that kind of, just not me, not me. I think it actually ties back to that incident. I really do, where I probably don't laugh out loud as much as the average, person, if you want to call it that, because of that incident. I think it's in my subconscious, maybe, a protection thing or, process before you laugh. I don't know what it is. I still laugh at things all the time. But it's amazing how, you have a laughter story. I have one too, and it came from our childhood. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I have another one that was pretty funny.
Go ahead.
A little bit embarrassing. I went to Catholic school for grade school, and we were given these envelopes because we had to go to church on Sunday. And my parents went to a different church. So the envelope was given. We were supposed to put money in it. And my mother would give us, she would give me some money to put in there. And, at the time, it was like 50 cents. And I thought, well, I'm not going to give them any money. So I would write my name on it because this was proof that we went to church. And in the line that had the amount that you were to put down, I would write ha ha.
Ah, and would you take the money out or put it in
And
your
I would
pocket?
keep the money. And after church, I would go and get a candy bar.
Wow. Wow.
So I kept doing this a few times. And, the principal of the school called my mother and me into the office and told my mother what I was doing. So my mother had a really hard time keeping a straight face. when she was reprimanding me, which is kind of funny.
Oh, it
But
is. Yeah. And you know, like I wonder as a kid if you ever thought you would get caught.
yes,
You
I
know,
didn't even think about it. I mean, I wrote my name down on it. Didn't even think about it.
easy money, easy money. I just think the funny part is you wrote your name down. So it wasn't that
Yes,
you were being transparent about it. It wasn't like, you put down Jane Doe and then pocketed the
yeah,
cash. That is funny. Wow.
yeah.
It's funny that we started looking at things here, how laughter um, plays a big role in our lives. I never thought of that until we're digging into this today. Um, what about the therapeutic aspect of laughter? How does that come into play in therapy? Is there a place for it in traditional therapy?
It is because it helps to regulate emotions. And when you have a patient who is depressed and something happens that seems devastating to them, kind of had a client who was depressed and was struggling with depression. And he came into the office and he started talking about the motivation that he got to go to the Cherry Hill Mall. And he took the bus there. And when he got out of the bus, he was walking into the mall. All of a sudden, he got attacked by seagulls. They started attacking his head. And the way that he was telling the story, he was telling me that they were attacking his head and he was screaming and he was moving his hands and he ran into the mall. Well, now, this particular client had been coming to therapy for a while, so we already had a very good therapeutic relationship. And so when he started telling me the story, I started laughing. And then I stopped and I apologized that I was laughing. And he says, "No, it's funny. It is really funny." And he goes, and the first thing I did was I went to the bathroom in the mall to make sure I wasn't bleeding. He goes, "But I have no idea like what happened because it was funny." But he was telling the story in such a way. And what was great about it is that, for that session, for those moments, he was able to talk, he was able to smile about it and share it and be present to the moment,
Wow.
which I thought was great.
It is funny when I already have the picture in my mind based on your
Yes.
description of it, of the hands, and it challenging moment at the time. I wonder if he got pooped on. That's my first thought. I don't know.
I don't think he did. He didn't mention that.
Yeah,
He
all
didn't
right, good
mention
for
that.
him.
So,
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
plus.
yeah,
Always look at the positive. Um,
yeah.
how can we use laughter in our lives to process some of the stuff that we go through? Let's say, is it as simple as just finding finding the funny in something? Always be looking for something that is positive, is maybe joyful in a situation. And I'm not talking about, a grief or trauma situation, making fun of that. I'm talking about if you're going through something or you've been dealing with something, to find another thing to make you laugh.
Yes, because well, we can emotionally reframe it in a way that can be funny. But I think that sometimes, well, and it also helps because it'll give us an opportunity to take a step back. And when you can reframe it in a different, perspective, then it's not as impactful, whatever the experience may be. And you can look at it in a different perspective because then you're away from it. You have some space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you,
Yeah,
you're stepping out of it for a moment.
right.
Your challenge, and maybe just even taking a break. Um,
Hmm.
I'm thinking also. I've talked to people who are practitioners and also people that have done drama therapy. And I gotta think that maybe there's something here for this, maybe in a group therapy situation,
Yes.
maybe taking an improv class. I have a friend who did it, never thought, and I think he's kind of funny, never thought, he never thought he would ever, take an improv class. Took, he said it took a lot of courage to do it, but he did it. And it said one of the most wonderful things he ever did. like that he actually stood
Yes,
up and did it, and they said he was kind of funny. I wasn't there. But yeah, group therapy. I would imagine this would be impactful on the humor
it would
side.
be. I mean, when we start laughing, different regions in our brain start to get activated. So then some, serotonin gets released, the dopamine gets released, and those are, the hormones that help with getting out of depression. I mean, I remember going to, well, I actually didn't go, but I was away on, for a week at the Omega Institute in New York, and they had a group laughter class. It was like a yoga class.
Hmm.
And, can you imagine it? And that's just like group therapy. I heard them, because I had to do something different. But as I was walking by, I heard everybody in the building laughing. Everybody was just laughing,
Oh.
and it was contagious because as I was walking by, then I started laughing,
You know,
and a lot, yeah,
it's
go
so
ahead.
true. Contagious. Yeah, I didn't
Mhm.
even think of it, in that terms. In those terms, that yeah, like you.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess it's the same when you go to a stand-up show. Some people start laughing, then others start laughing because there's certain energy that's also released,
Right.
I believe, energetically. What's going on there? Yes, there's a release of chemicals within our
Yeah.
brains, but there's more magic
Hmm.
happening within there. What other thoughts you want people to know when it comes to laughter on a therapeutic level?
I think that it is just very helpful, and it helps to change the mood that we're in because the laughter has a lot to do with our breathing as well.
Hmm.
So when we're catching up after laughing really hard, we're taking deep breaths in, and we're in a completely different space.
Interesting. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
breathing is a game changer. We've talked about that before. Breath work in terms of releasing things, getting you in the moment, changing. Well, it's scientifically proven. When you breathe, you're letting things out. You're expelling
Mhm.
energy. Never thought of that. Yeah, when you're laughing, you're breathing a lot.
Right. A lot.
Hmm. Wow. I'm seeing this in all. Yes, we knew that laughter was good for you. Never even
Mhm.
realized most of what we're talking about here today until you brought it to the attention of us. Um, can you use it in your therapy, or is it more of a you need to seek it out yourself? People, individuals, whether it's find something that makes you laugh, find a Netflix special, go to a comedy show, whatever it is. Is there any way that you can work with it, or it's an outside thing?
I bring it into the session when I have a client and let's say the session is coming to an end and it's time for them to transition back into the world. You know, I monitor where they're at, and depending on how the relationship is between me and the client, then I will ask them, if they would like to hear a joke. And they'll say, well, the patients that I ask typically say yes. And then I will tell them a joke, because I know that in that moment where they're at, it could be a very intense session. It's helpful to get them out of that space to prepare them to walk back out into the world, especially if it's something really, really hurtful and they've been crying, you know.
Hmm.
And another thing that I always say to them, because a lot of people don't like to cry, and um, I always affirm to them that tears are healing. And I always say, do you want to hear a fun fact? And they'll say, well, yeah. And I'll say, well, you can't cry and chew gum at the same time. And everybody is like, really? I have to bring gum to therapy.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
be I'm gonna be driving later and thinking of something sad to make myself cry while I'm chewing gum to see if it actually that's is that true? Is that true?
It's true. You know why?
Don't tell me. Let me think about this. Um, I don't know why. Tell me.
When we're chewing gum, it regulates our breathing. And when we cry, we stop breathing.
Whoa,
Hmm.
that's cool. Hmm. Interesting. So when we chew gum, it regulates our breathing. When we cry,
Right.
we stop breathing.
Hmm.
As we're talking about this, I'm seeing a very thin line between laughing and crying.
Yes.
Now they're completely separate, but not in terms of the oxygen. You know, you say that, well, I take that back. Um, between laughing and crying, I'm surprised that we don't breathe when we're crying.
If you think about it, when the last time that you were crying, when you cry, you're not breathing. Tears are flowing, and then you go, and when you take that deep breath, the crying subsides a little bit. But if you stop breathing, you start crying again. And the face gets red, the
Uh-huh.
body gets
Uh-huh.
hot, right?
Well, look at a little kid when they're crying and they get to that point where they're and
Uh-huh.
it's
Hmm.
almost as if now they have to breathe. Yeah, and that's why
Right.
they do that. But then normally when they're doing that, they stop crying because it like you said, they're catching up on the breathing. Interesting. Wow, learning a lot today. Wow. Like wow. Um,
And I also have a sample of a journal that has that's that's funny, that I only use with certain clients again. And this is, I give them as an example of having some help with writing in a journal, doing some emotional
sure,
writing or free writing.
sure.
And I will take that out and, just like look through it. And I'm very careful with that particular piece, make sure that the patient isn't offended and that they're okay, that they understand this is just
Hmm.
another tool that I use to help them get outside of their head, and to help. Because some people, writing is helpful, but they don't know what to write or how to write.
Yep.
And there are journals that are created with questions that they can use, and I like funny ones.
Hmm. I use a gratitude journal that has the fields where you just fill them out. $8
Hmm.
on Amazon. Fantastic. And it lasts a year. It's actually a knockoff of like one that's like $26. Um, but on the regular journal, I know it's important and that the mind-hand connection and that when you're writing, it's real. You've made it real. It's not just some thoughts in your head that are bouncing around. You've made this thought or this situation real. But I heard recently that when you journal, and I'm challenged by it, I'm verbal. I can write things down. I find myself not journaling as much anymore. It's almost as if I don't want to hear myself anymore. Um, but that you see patterns when you start writing and journaling, which I never even thought of. I haven't paid attention to that, but I'm going to start paying attention to it. But I get what you're saying. So you bring out a fictitious journal entry.
Hmm.
Okay, I get you.
Hmm.
So you really need to read the patient, their personality, their situation.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
gotcha on
Right.
that.
Right. Because I don't want to offend anyone, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm not taking what they're saying seriously. I'm very, direct when I ask or when I bring it out, and it's timed.
Sure.
And over the years of working with patients, it's flowed great. You know.
Hmm. No, I think that's a great idea, and it's very subjectionable. I
Hmm.
may think Sebastian Maniscalco's stand-up is hysterical. You may say, I don't really think so. I don't think he's funny. You have to read the room, i.e., read the
Right.
patient before you break that stuff out.
Right.
So interesting today. Learned a lot. I'm going to be
Right.
the smartest man in the room moving forward, thanks to you. Um, you offer mental health services, therapy to people. You're licensed in New Jersey, correct?
Right.
Gotcha. How do we find you?
Well, you can go to www.pippna.com, or you can call 856-548-9557.
And as we identified earlier, you also help people that have been involved in car accidents because is a provision in your insurance policy typically
Yes.
for therapy, PTSD.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that information that I just gave is for the PIP patients,
Gotcha. Okay.
you know. And if anyone is interested in contacting me for private therapy, they can just let me know
Yep.
that's what they want. Yeah.
And they can do that just by going to the website and the contact section on there, right?
Yes. Yeah. Or, leaving or calling and leaving a message and letting me know.
Gotcha. Thank you for today. Wow. Like seriously,
Yeah.
learned a lot. As always, learned a lot. And those little facts. It's amazing. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward next time we get together.
Okay.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.